Okay. Welcome to those that may be joining from home. This is a work session of the Poquoson City Council for Tuesday, October 14th. We're going to talk about three items as a council. First is an overview of the recycling program to date and any recommended changes and things like that. Second item's amendments to the zoning ordinance. We're going to talk about the R3 district and reduction of setbacks and modification of the mixed use concept. And then number three is electronic signs. I know we've talked about that in work session before, but we'll come back and revisit that. So let's start with the recycling program. I see, Tom, y'all brought a new whole staff to the table, and we appreciate that. So if you and however you want to proceed, we're listening.
What we wanted to do is just update y'all on what has happened, progressed so far. I know there was some issues earlier, on certain little items, and mainly we wanted to, we went in like in August 28th, Bodina had a meeting with them on some of our concerns, and kind of we just put that in, bullet form on here, some questions of, how long things were taking and the few little issues, communication problems, certain little things that we, had little niches along the way. And we did know that the first couple of months, they were going to be a little bit slower, due to learning the routes and, just getting familiarized with Poquoson and its residents and, and kind of how this program was going to work. And so basically it's all here, on here, and I just wanted you guys to take a look at it. I'm really not going to go down through it. I'm just, if you have any questions, there is some new information in here that, we'll want some, some viewpoints from council on. And like I said, I did want to say, Bodina has done a tremendous job here. She's really been in the forefront of this, and she's done an excellent job. And I think, all in all, from the time we started bringing forth to where we're at now, that things have just turned over. We haven't had any complaints whatsoever, basically, in the last 3 pickups. So we've come a long way. So now, if y'all have any questions or.
Tom, why don't you walk us through
okay.
Essentially the numbers that you provided? I think the people at home would be interested in those. And then, Mr. Mayor, if it's all right, go ahead and deal with the problems and the questions we had.
I think so. I think that's it. I think that's exactly right. That if there's a question that we've heard normally from a citizen or from a council member, there's at least 200 or 300 people that would like to get the same answer. So I have no problem just walking down through the white paper. I appreciate that, but I think that we ought to share it. And I have no, just summarize the paragraphs as you come down, go through the numbers, and then let's go through the questions and see if there's any comments.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. I'll start off, what we did was the set out rate for the previous July numbers, are on this sheet. And Bodina, I'm going to let you go over those.
Okay. What I did was I took 2013 versus 2014 set out rates and poundage per household per set out. So July 2013 was a 68% set out rate. July 2014 was a 74.98% set out rate. That was an increase of 6.7%. For July poundage, we had 17.12. We went to 52.56. That's a difference of 35.44 pounds. And August set out was 64.91%. In 2013, 2014 was 70%. That's a 5.09% increase. August, July 2013 poundage was 17.34. 2014 was 68.12. That's a 50.78% in our tonnage increase. September set out was 65.81% in 2013. 2014 was 76.23. That's a 10.42% increase. And September's tonnage was 16.93 for 2013 and 53.83 for 2014. That's 36.9 pounds more per household.
Wow.
You
That,
know, even, I'd like to say, even the, county waste, they realize, I mean, Poquoson is really great in recycling. And, the truck drivers, as you'll see, in the next, one of these next bullets, I mean, sometimes they're having to dump 4 times for the city. And that's a tremendous, we have really pushed the numbers, and I think it's a great thing, I really do. And most people are very satisfied.
those are very, very positive metrics as far as recycling. I guess the proof will be as if we're seeing a decrease in what we have to tip for refuge, right? But that's really, really good, and I just want to make sure I was interpreting that. But basically, what you're saying is, on average, between the 3 months, that the change in the cart, the pickup, whatever, is equated to at least 40 to 45 pounds per household on average
Yes.
of recycling.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that? I know that with this new recycling company, they take more types of plastics, and I'm sure that that's responsible for the majority of the increase in tonnage. But my question is, where they take it to, is it an entirely different location
Yes.
for the processing?
Yes.
And is there a way to know whether their, I don't want to say cleanliness of I'm not sure what you call the trash that gets mixed in accidentally to recyclables, is it still pretty good coming from Poquoson?
At this time, it is still very good. One of the things that the new company is doing is, I'm going to call it a panic button for lack of a better word, but they are installing a button in their vehicle that when they see when the cans are dumped, if there's trash or something mixed in there, they're going to push the button. And if they see a repetitive, then they were going to address that homeowner. So it is a way of making sure that it stays a little bit cleaner.
Where do they dump it now, since they have to make 4 trips a day sometimes? How far do they have to go to?
They're going to the Newport News facilities,
Okay.
as far as I know.
That far then?
It's not that far, but it is further than they used to have to go.
How you pronounce it, I'm not a
Okay, is there any questions, any more questions on that? We'll go on down through the bullets then. One of the questions, these are some of the questions that we had when we, originally started, and, we knew there was problems. To begin with, it was taking 12 hours plus to collect the routes. And, of course, the answer that we got from them was that, they actually had their their supervisors were actually driving the trucks originally. And, once they, they kind of figured out what they wanted to do, and on down further, they actually hired 2 new drivers, and then they were able to take the routes. And actually, they got a couple of the drivers from our garbage company, and that really helped because they were actually able to redo the routes, a little bit better. So,
Tom, just a quick question. I see here, there's an average of maybe 6 or 7% increase in the set-out rate, but a 5% increase, for instance, in set-out rate created a 50% increase in trash collected. Okay? And so are we expecting that our normal trash that we haul away will drop down, which will offset this?
I would expect that that's probably the case.
Do we have a way to measure that?
We're still kind of learning the process, but we'll see what we can do to try to get those numbers. So, Bo, you want to continue?
No?
The next question was, what do we do if a whole street was missed? This did happen. It happened one time. We are to call the West Point Division manager as soon as we find out, and he will have a truck to us that afternoon or the next morning, depending on how late it is and when he can get the truck in. That was one of the things that we needed to learn in communication. I'm sorry that it happened to us, and it was a communication on their side that it did happen to us. But that was one of those. The other thing we had for number 3 was communication and communicating in a timely manner. What was happening is we were communicating with the division manager. The division manager was actually driving a truck, so it was taking him longer to get back to us. Now that they've gotten comfortable, they've hired people to drive those trucks. They've also promoted a route supervisor. So he is now back doing his job and able to get back to us in a timely manner. On August 4th, we started switching the cans to either the larger recycling can. Everybody in the city got a 65-gallon. We could go up to a 95-gallon or down to a 35, depending on the preference of the resident. They did start delivering those on August 4th. This is actually question number 4, so I wanted you to understand where I was going. And some of the homeowners had already taken their 65 gallons back into their backyard or into the garage. So some of our homeowners right now have 2 cans because they haven't been able to recover them. So they are going to pick them up as they see them. All of our carts are coded with a numerical number on them, plus they have a GFI tag in them. So they are able to identify the ones that they need to pick back up, and they will be able to recover them. We are not being billed for those second containers at those homes. So that is not a concern at this point in time.
But, you know, just ask a question, I know it's kind of silly, but is 95 gallon the biggest container they have?
95 is the biggest container they have.
That's big enough for you to fit into.
I've had people ask the question, so I thought I would pose it.
And actually, out of the people that are calling in to get new cans, I mean, it's a huge percentile that's going to the larger carts. Some people are asking for 2 carts now.
Does that cost us more?
Wow.
It does, and that's something we were going to bring up
We'll
later.
get to that one.
Okay.
One of the things that was up in the top of the overview is, in the month of August, we had 170 requests for the larger carts. 20 of those were, well, we had 170 requests for changes. 20 of those only were for 35s. It did take them through the whole month of September to be able to get those delivered. So we are, and they were, in the beginning, they were sending me pictures of what was out, going, do you see this? So we are big recyclers. So it's nice to see that it is going in and it is working. I did discuss that we are looking at, they sent us the bill, they sent VIPSPA the bill, and VIPSPA had some concerns with it. So they have sent it out to all of the counties and cities that are in the VIPSPA program to be audited. At this time, I have completed our audit and have sent it back to them. So there were some changes with a couple of duplicate addresses and some changes where some of our waivered residents were not on the bill. So we had to do a little adjusting on those. In the beginning, County Waste was not able to collect our handicap special pickups that were on long lanes. The staff decided to grandfather in our 8 residents that were on special pickups on the long lanes. We switched those residents back to the 18-gallon tote, and we have one of our city employees going every Wednesday and picking up their recycling for them. So they did not lose the ability to recycle. Right now, in the past, when we had people move in, the question is, how do we handle large quantity pickups? In the past, when we had people move in, they would just put their boxes out on normal recycling day. County Waste has different vehicles. They have a harder time at doing that. So they have asked that our residents do any large quantity pickups, and that could be boxes, that could be, you know, the plastic furniture off of your decks, any of that kind of thing. I actually had a whole set call in today. If you want that, you are to call Public Works. Public Works will set it up. They pick up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They just need to know by 12 o'clock the day before. So they are picking those type of things up, and they are trying to work with us and get that going.
And there is a fee for that?
No, not for large quantity pickups. There is no fee for the large quantity
Okay.
pickups.
But Dina, along those lines, on the bulk drop-off days, do we divide up the trash from
Oh,
the
that's the long range,
stuff
okay.
that can be recycled, or is it?
On,
On bulk drop-off
convenience
days
side
back
day.
here behind City Hall?
no,
Would it benefit us to do that?
we don't do that. I really don't think so because of the time and as many people that flow through that. That program has, y'all, by implementing that is just something it's basically the greatest thing that the citizens love that. And we couldn't possibly slow that down. It's just, it runs on a good day, I mean, it's running constantly. You couldn't take the time to do that. I'd have to have more employees there, and it would be bad. So,
Tom, I've had numerous favorable comments about bulk pickup out here, and people are really impressed with the way that goes, and I thank you for that. But will any of this impact the bulk pickups at a person's residence?
The only thing that it's going to impact is now they don't have to call us to take the plastics away. We can do it in the recycling. So that's where it's going to impact it and change it a little. It's because more now, like your flower pots that you get plants from McDonald's is now recyclable as to where before people were putting them in bulk. And that's how it's going to impact it.
So the message to the homeowner here, just so we're clear, the message to the homeowner here is they can call Public Works if they have plastic goods only, and get, or cardboard, and get a recycling pickup that does not factor into their bulk rate pickup, right?
Correct.
And that is something that you just set up. They'll come Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays and take care of that if you have more, and it doesn't cost you the cost of a bulk pickup. But the bulk pickup is still available for other stuff. So
Yes.
use it to your advantage as the homeowner,
Correct.
right?
I would like to skip to number 10 and then go back to number 9.
Okay.
Number 10 says, what happens if we have a snow high water day? If we're closed for one day, all routes will just be delayed one day. Anything that's 2 and more, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis because it may be that we're closed, but James City County's not. So it would be more of a day-by-day and what trucks are available.
And I'm sorry, and you mean business days, because it's
Business
Friday,
days.
so it would be Monday.
No, it'd be Saturday. So if ours is Friday, it would be on Saturday. It's just delayed one day. Okay, number 9 is currently long lanes are not being serviced. County Waste has purchased a small pup truck like we had before for collecting the long lanes. They are now offering this service for a charge of $10 per house per month. This lane still has to be evaluated for access and safety. The collection date may change to a different date than our, meaning the city's normal collection date. And the staff has concluded this could affect 164 residents. Number 11, can a resident have more than one cart? Yes, they can. However, the city will be charged $1.47 per month for that cart. The new services, as I said before, is they are now offering the long lane collection for $10 per house per month. County Waste is, we would like to know, County Waste is also offering to our businesses, and this is an agreement with County Waste and the business. It does not happen to go anything through the city. But since they are in the city and they are servicing us, they would like to offer to our city, or to our businesses, for $9.50 a month, 2 95-gallon recycling carts, and those would be picked up on Fridays also. So it's just a benefit to our businesses.
And we have had a few businesses asking, like Champs, they wanted to be able to recycle. So now this gives them an opportunity, but they would go directly between them and the recycling company. So the city would be out of the loop all the time.
And one of our churches has already signed up for this. So it is something that is out there.
And that could be offset by reducing their dumpster size for what their other pickup is.
Exactly. County Waste also asked us the question, they would like to know if we would like them to pick up carts that have not been serviced, meaning that, you know, our carts went into effect July 1st, and at this date, they still have never been picked up. So they wanted to know if we would like them to pick it up. So those, the first 2, 1 and 2, and item number 11 are cost items that we wanted y'all's input, information, direction of what to do.
So if you have 5 houses on the long lane, it's $50.
If each one of them, yes. And this is not just Poquoson, it's York County, it's all the other VIPSPA.
It's standard.
Yeah.
Tom, let me clarify that the persons that live on a long private lane, still have the option of bringing their recycling to the closest public street, and it'll be picked up there. So this is,
Yes, that's what they're doing now. We really haven't had anybody call in a while with any detrimental things to say about it. So they're bringing them out now. But it just gives the ones that want to, if they want to pay, the $10 and their lane is accessible, then they can pay that money,
The city will receive, it will be on our monthly bill. We have talked to the Director of Finance, and she said we can bill those people the additional money if that is what is decided to do.
Now, is that $10 a month in additional to the normal charge?
Yes, sir.
so the question, if you're interested in doing it, is whether or not you would be amenable to passing that cost on to the homeowner that's using the service, or whether or not you want to absorb it. And doing really quick math, absorbing it is about a $20,000 a year cost based on this 164 times 10 times 12, if I'm doing my math right.
So that's 100, that was one of my questions. So the 164, it's 164 homes, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's 164 homes that we've counted on long lanes. Okay. Or private lanes, long private lanes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
So, so if, just let us know what direction, you'd like us to take, and if there's any other questions or any other information that we can bring back to you, if you have any other questions or concerns, we'd be glad to, bring that information back.
All right, council, y'all have other questions that you want answers?
I've got, one comment and a question. My lane's pretty long too, and I've found that if you've got a boat hitch, that little handle will hook right over that boat hitch, and you can pull that thing as far as you want.
Yes.
And I don't have to walk that thing down my driveway, I can tell you that. I don't do it.
Bike racks. Bike racks
A bike
work
rack will
too.
work too.
And we passed out in our informational package that everybody got, we gave the information where they could buy a little apparatus that would go on there for, it was like $20.
$24.95, a
And
towing
that you
tank.
could, that could tow it down there. So that would be like a one-time cost
Makes it
So-
easy.
for
Have
that.
you seen anybody forget to
We-
take it off and keep driving into town?
I haven't seen that yet.
They're gonna know it pretty soon.
Oh, I'm sure.
It makes a little noise.
It'd probably be full by the time they got back home. Good Lord.
Now, the other cost increase was the $1.47 for any houses that wanted additional recycling carts. One of the things that we have been telling them now is we want them to upgrade to the 95 first, see how that works, and then contact us back.
Here would-
So understand, we've only upgraded 150 homes at this time to the 95.
Here would be my initial thought on that. If you're recycling enough to require two 95-gallon containers, and that means you're really good at it, then you ought to be able to take on a refuge at a smaller rate. In other words, come out ahead by coming from a 60-gallon drum to a 35 or going to every other week apparatus, and the offset would still save you money if we still collected the $1.47. And that way we don't have everybody saying, well, I want two bins, I want two bins. And if it can get over, it can get out of hand is what I'm thinking. And then they stop using them. So what I'm basically here is that citizens have found a way, which I expect them to, most people do, find a way to work the system to their advantage. And they've adapted. The recycling numbers kind of show that. It's a very positive trend. My only concern is we grandfathered 8 people in to, quote, a service that we used to do where they cannot get down the lane. Is that open to new people coming in, and what are the qualifications if we were to do that?
Okay. County Waste will service the new people now that they have the pup truck, and it is not an additional cost.
At no charge, because they are it's like elderly handicapped people.
Okay.
That's the only
And the reason I say that is because it gets some people confused. And maybe y'all have had the same question, but somebody's coming down this private lane and servicing this house, why won't they pick up mine? So what I'm trying to make sure is that everybody gets out the same understanding of, yes, you can qualify for that pickup, but what are those qualifications?
The qualification is I have to have a letter from their doctor saying they are unable, and no one in their home is
Right.
unable to get their cart to the road. So it actually has to come from their physician. So it's not just, I'm 82 years old and I can't carry it there. I actually have to have it either on letterhead or a prescription pad.
So if,
$10 a month.
No,
ti-
that's just to go on that list of a special pickup, and it
right, then they
doesn't
don't get
matter.
paid the $10. That's what I'm saying. I just don't want us to be listening, because I can tell you one lane in particular that I've gotten a complaint, and it was easily explained. There is a disabled person down the lane that cannot do that, and the truck goes down that lane, but there's 4 other houses on that lane. So what they see is they're somehow doing preferential treatment. What we're really doing is a service to a disabled person. It's available to the others for $10 a month, but if they are disabled as well, there's an avenue open to them, and that's what I want to make sure that we're communicating.
Correct.
And communications is the key. I like this list. I would maybe include those last couple questions about how you get on the disabled list, what it takes to do that. That would get you the free pickup. And then that we kind of put this handout in the next bill set, or the upcoming bill set. Just as information. How's the recycling going? Very good metrics. We think it's a success. But here's the things that you need to know as a homeowner that are available to you, and here's the facts of it. So that's what I would recommend.
We can do that.
Okay,
No problem.
buddy?
My question was gonna be, I noticed on Food Bank Day, the 4th Tuesday of each month, I noticed that there is a recycle bin now behind the old City Hall. Can we use that? We've been throwing all that cardboard in the dumpster, and I hate to do that.
You can use that.
Okay.
And it does go out on Blue Fridays.
Okay.
And Parks and Rec, one of their employees actually takes it out to Poquoson Avenue. We have 2 in use at Public Works also, and we take them out to Poquoson Avenue.
And if you have additional needs for that, we can take care of it, just let us know.
Okay.
Because that's a very, very good thing.
Okay, and I guess the only other thing I'd ask is, this is basically after the first quarter of operations, right?
Yes, sir.
So very positive trend. I wouldn't mind y'all coming back after a year from now. I'm not trying to say after 1 year, but maybe a year from now. Are we still doing as well, better, other changes that need to be made, or are these other things working out for us? Kind of comparison numbers. All right? Because I think it's all important to us, but very positive, and I'm shocked at the numbers, to be quite honest with you. But what a difference the rollout cart seems to have made, and the change in vendor. So, anything else? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I guess the next item is amendments to the zoning ordinance. I saw Debbie coming in here with a
Nice job.
smile on her face. She was happy to join us this evening and tell us all about changes she wants to do on the zoning ordinance. Come on, Debbie.
You may have Kevin as well.
All right, Kevin as well.
Members of council, as they're coming up, you'll recall that it's been our practice whenever we were contemplating significant changes to the zoning ordinance, that we come and speak with you first, at least before it gets too far down the road, to make sure that our thoughts are consistent with your expectations, at least for the purpose of advancing something through the process of consideration. We have also benefited several times from your suggestions in terms of modifications as well. just as we did with the electronic signs, which we'll talk about tonight. So we're here today. Staff would like to propose some changes. We're here to listen. If you are favorable that they should be considered, we'll advance it on to the PC. If for any reason you're not comfortable or like us to look at it in a different way, we'll be glad to do that as well, just again as we've done with the electronic signs. Okay, Kevin?
Thank you so much, Mayor and members of council, Mr. Wheeler. As Randy said, have become accustomed to presenting certain changes that we've at least developed conceptually in the planning department to you to gauge interest and to discuss it and get suggestions and feedback prior to moving forward with them. And since I've been here, which is over 3 years now, 2 of them we've discussed at length for quite a while. Those would be proposed changes to the R3 district, the multifamily residential district, primarily the setback requirements for townhomes and lot area requirements for townhomes. And additionally, we've talked about the village commercial district and allowing a standalone residential component. And we'll get to that later, but first we'll speak about the R3 proposal. As I mentioned, we're continually searching for ways to improve the city's land use ordinances. And over the past decade, we've received proposals for 2 townhome developments within the city, both of which were presented with challenges due to the required setbacks within the R3 multifamily district. The current setbacks within this district are incompatible with the maximum allowable density yield in the district, which is 12 units per acre. As such, we've looked at these setbacks and we're revisiting them in an effort to reduce them to a more compatible level with what allowable density, what maximum allowable density yield is permitted within the district. Presently, the current setback requirements in this district are 35 feet for the front, 30 for the rear, and 15 for the side. Those may seem familiar to you because they are the exact same as in 2 of our single-family residential districts, the R1 and the R2. And just to put this in perspective, the recommended density within those districts, in accordance with the comprehensive plan, is 1.5 to 2 units per acre. Within the R3, it is 12 units per acre. So there's definitely a vast difference there. So the proposed setbacks that we have come up with are as follows. For the front yard with a front loading garage, would be 20 feet. Front yard with a rear loading garage would be 10 feet. Rear yard with a rear loading garage is 20 feet. Rear yard would just be 20 feet. I've listed this twice to kind of prove the point that it doesn't matter if it's a front loading or rear loading garage, the rear yard would be 20 feet. The side yard would be 10 feet with a minimum building separation between buildings of 20 feet, and a side yard with a side loading garage would be 20 feet. A standard parking space is 9 by 18, so 18 feet long. That's where that 20 feet's coming from.
Kevin?
Yes.
One question. When I saw this, what struck me was, why wouldn't a rear yard with a front loading garage be the same thing as a front yard with a rear loading garage? Why wouldn't that be 10 feet also?
In this case, we thought it was important to preserve some sort of rear yard. If you're not going to take advantage of putting a garage in your rear yard, those in this more suburban multifamily district could still utilize some space for a rear yard in this instance.
It would seem like you say, that the normal parking space is 18 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So if we still make them maintain the 20-foot rear yard setback, but they put the front loading garage in, then aren't we cramming the front of that garage closer to the street? In other words, why couldn't they move the building back so they've got room to back out of the garage before they hit the street?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Do we know what the size of the setback is on the current townhouses over on Charles Parish?
Most of those, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, I know some of those were built probably prior to some of our zoning regulations, but they would have to meet the current setback of 35 feet. Those are built on a private street, if I'm not mistaken, or at least in some cases, so they may be a little closer to that street.
I was just wanting to know, because I know what that seems like.
Yeah, I
you
do
know the
have some
measurements on those?
photos in
And they
this.
they don't have driveways, they have parking in front of that,
Yes,
so
yes.
that would matter, okay.
They're not 35 feet.
No.
The front yards are very small. But then there's no, the parking is the parking lot, I guess. Okay. I'd be curious to know those numbers, just.
Absolutely, absolutely. To illustrate this point and just to put in pictures what some of these setbacks would allow for, I went out to 2 developments in Newport News, Port Warwick being the first and Stony Run being the other, at the corner of Jefferson and Denby in Newport News. There are some condo units in Stony Run, so really with this proposal, I have the pictures from Port Warwick, and this setback is between 8 and 10 feet. This is what the standard throughout Port Warwick, which is a combo of duplexes and single-family dwellings. You can just see the uniformity and that you can still get a little yard of green space in that front yard.
Is the setback measured from the curb or the?
To the steps in this instance.
From the steps to the curb or?
Yeah, from the steps to
The
the sidewalk, the closest point of the sidewalk.
Okay.
Here's some another picture. I'm just going to go through these quickly.
But these are 10 feet, and you're proposing 20 feet.
20 feet for a,
Parking.
let's see, for a front-loading garage, yes. For a rear-loading garage, they would be able to be 10 feet.
So if there's not a garage up there like that, 10 would be fine.
All of these units are rear-loading garages in Port Warwick. In fact, here's the illustration. It's kind of a private shared drive that goes behind and connects all these, to almost an alleyway they can utilize to access their rear-loading garages. And here kind of puts it in perspective. This is a smaller vehicle, and this is a 20-foot setback. And it's still difficult to park it in.
That's 20 feet from,
No,
from
that's
what?
not 20.
From the garage to the,
Center of the road?
no, not to the center of the road, to the road where the road meets kind of the swale right there.
That's not 20 feet.
No way.
Maybe from the back of
the-
the house.
The angle, well, to the back of the house from the swale line in the road to the garage. Here's an aerial of it, of Port Warwick. You can see this reduction in setbacks in lot area allows for them to create pocket parks and things of that nature. You can see over on the western side of this where I believe there's a railroad back. That's a long kind of driveway that those homes share for access to their rear-loading garages. The second thing that we propose changing in this district is the elimination of the townhome area requirement. Presently, the ordinance, as it's written, requires 25,000 square feet of area for the first 3 units in a townhome development, and an additional 2,000 square feet for each additional unit, maxed at 10 units total. This encourages larger buildings with more units. Larger buildings can lend themselves to not necessarily being as aesthetically pleasing. We are proposing removing this requirement in its entirety just to allow the maximum allowable density in the district to dictate the shape and layout of a development. So that wraps up the proposal for the R3 district. I can answer any questions you have on that, or just jump right into the village commercial if you wish.
Stop and see if there's any questions right now,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you're willing to take more questions at the end. Is that-
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anything right now?
I have one comment, if I could, please. Following up on Councilman Green's comment about the difference in setbacks to the rear yard, it's the same setback regardless if there's a garage, a zero-loading garage or not. I think the issue there is that we're trying to maintain some perimeter buffering from the adjacent neighbor. Most of the time, your rear setback is going to be adjacent to another parcel with a different type of development on it. So I think with a 20-foot setback, regardless of if there's a garage, it's just the preservation of open space between this development and the adjacent parcel. I just wanted to add that.
And thank you, Debbie. That's a very good point. Most of our R3 districts throughout the city are adjacent to single-family districts.
But if it was
But if they
a,
weren't, if they weren't, what if we're talking a large enough R3 subdivision that they were townhomes back to back? Wouldn't it make sense to allow them to reduce that? You're still gonna have 20 feet between the buildings, and we're only requiring 20 feet on the sides. It just seems like to me, if, you know, I could see saying something like, okay, if it backs up to a residential neighborhood, then it has to be the 20.
In the big woods too, our zoning districts are basically structured in that form, in that if there's a greater setback, it's adjacent to a residential district. So it would not be difficult to add the kind of, you know, that particular language into this R3 district as well. So it might be something.
Yeah.
Because it was rear loading. it's gonna be
Certainly
an
something we
alleyway.
could implement.
and I was gonna make same comment that Buddy made, if it were large enough to have multiple units that went back to back, just like in Port Warren, okay, you would be decreasing the density capability where you'd require that to be maintained.
Right.
I had the same question that you did though when I first saw those setbacks. It was like, well, why is there a difference?
All right. I can. Moving forward to the Village Commercial District, in-house and after how well received the Plan Unit Development Mixed Use Overlay District has been received by the public and developers specifically, we were looking at ways to improve and update the Village Commercial District. As you may recall, back in 2011, the residential uses were reintroduced to the Village Commercial District, making them permissible on the second floor by right and the third floor with a conditional use permit of commercial buildings. So it's still a truly commercial structure with residential uses added on. More recently, we came up with the Plan Unit Development Mixed Use Overlay, which encourages a mix of varying density residential uses with retail and office uses. The intent of the Village Commercial District reads as follows. This district is intended to encourage the establishment of a village center by permitting a variety of commercial, office, and residential uses in order to create a center of business and economic activity consistent with the locational advantage and prominence inherent in the big woods. So with that intent in mind, the purpose of this concept is to fully comply with the intent of the district, specifically its encouragement of a variety of uses. The proposed concept is introducing the allowance of standalone residential in the style of the PUD. This would allow for the VC to act as an independent PUD for the most part. The uses would not necessarily be similar. And certainly, we wouldn't expect the scale of development we would in the PUD within the Village Commercial. It would allow, in the sense that it would act as an independent, it would not, development within the Village Commercial would not require 5 acres, and an approval of a master plan, which is required as part of PUD activation, would not be required as well.
Kevin, could you define PUD before you left that?
I'm sorry, planned unit development,
Okay.
mixed use overlay. So the proposed concept is with a conditional use permit, townhomes, single-family detached, two-family dwellings, and multifamily dwellings would be permitted on a standalone basis, provided a certain ratio of commercial is met. The ratio for the PUD district is 500 square feet of commercial per developed acre. In the Village Commercial, it would Our thoughts, at least in-house, is that it would need to be higher than that. Right now, within the village commercial, if 2 floors are allowed with the activation of a conditional use permit, you still require that 1 floor of commercial. So in this case, essentially, after approval of a conditional use permit, you would still require 33.3% of a development to be commercial. The proposed setbacks would be very similar to what we find in the PUD, 15 feet for the front with a front-loading garage, 10 feet front with no garage or a rear-loading garage, and no side or rear setbacks would be required, with the exception that for a rear-loading garage, 15 feet would be required. The village commercial is inherently a denser district, and traffic-wise, and it's zero setback in its inherent nature. So we wanted to implement something that was more compatible with that, with the development of these.
Kevin, can I ask you to clarify a point? Several times you mentioned standalone residential, and then you did say as long as they met the necessary commercial, but just to clarify, the standalone residential is on the same parcel as the required commercial. So, as I understand this concept, and I'm oversimplifying just to make it easy, right now, you can build a building that's commercial in nature, and by right, in the village commercial, you can build the exact same square footage of residential immediately above it on the next floor.
Yes.
By right. Then, with conditional use permit from city council, you can add an additional floor, and that's the ratio that you had talked about. So if you take that, if you think of it as a series of Legos, instead of having 3 Legos stacked up, now you're talking about having potentially the 3 Legos in different configurations, but on the same parcel.
Yes,
This
sir.
is not abandoning the commercial mixed-use concept of village. It's just allowing a different way for it to be constructed.
Absolutely. The intent of the district would procedurally stay the same. With that ratio, we would just allow it in a different form.
Get one more question. On no side or rear setbacks would be required except for rear loading garages. If one of these units is on a corner or a side street, there's no setbacks required?
Not in the village commercial, no, sir.
And what did we have formerly?
For these types of setbacks did not exist in the village commercial because it's a 0 lot line. The only present setback within the village commercial is 20 feet for a rear yard.
Okay.
And with that being said, only primarily commercial buildings are allowed there, at least on the first floor anyway. Multifamily dwellings would be held to the same setbacks as commercial buildings in the village commercial because these buildings lend themselves to a more kind of commercial style, if you will. And with that being said, like condos, they may implement balconies, so they may want to meet a 5-foot setback all the way up. But we felt that those setbacks would not be appropriate for solely multifamily structures. And here's an example of that. This is Port Warwick again. This is a strictly condominium building, and that's probably a 5-foot setback, but still very close to the road, and it offers to the neighborhood feel. Here's some more. This is commercial on the bottom floor and condos and apartments on the top floor. This is a Stony Run, which has kind of a more suburban feel, strictly because the larger parking lot, but it's still a similar concept. You can see the stores on the bottom floor and the top 2 floors, in this case, are apartments. There's another angle of that same building. And this is a different building off to the side. They have 2 of the mixed-use buildings on the site. And it's primarily a residential development, this in Stony Run. I'm just using these photos to illustrate kind of a type of mix that would be permitted. These are condo buildings with front-loaded garages.
Kevin, if I might comment, I'm seeing a lot of of pavement and runoff problems. and
Absolutely.
lacking in green space. And I want to make sure that whatever we do, we don't have, I don't think we could handle this, with the runoff. It's just so paved.
Absolutely. We would, within the village commercial and really throughout the city, lots are only allowed to be developed a certain percentage. In this case, it's 18% impervious. Anything above and beyond that percentage, they have to mitigate for. And mitigation in this instance would be landscaping, making sure the land can sustain it. And certainly, all development would have to meet the new stormwater regulations. And I threw this picture of Port Warwick in just to illustrate that point that Councilwoman Crawford just made. There's something much more aesthetically pleasing about Port Warwick as opposed to Stony Run. All of these, it actually illustrates the point for rear-loading garages as opposed to front-loading garages too. So just something to think about. I can answer any questions on the village commercial proposal as well. We look forward to taking these same concepts to the Planning Commission at their upcoming meeting on Monday to kind of gauge their interest as well
So
and implement any of their
just,
feedback.
just one overall, because you're asking for comments, and I guess I like the fact that basically what staff is at least engaging on with the Planning Commission is the fact that the residential component in village commercial can be independent of the business portion.
Yes.
And very similar to what we've seen demonstrated across from Patrick Henry Airport in that concept where sometimes mixing the two doesn't always appeal to the most folks, but the ability to do both. Is there any thought process in y'all's mind of extending the PUD overlay ordinance on top of village commercial, or have we already done that?
The overlay is already done. So essentially right now, if you could collect 5 acres of property in the village commercial, you could present council with a master plan.
Instead of using the village commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The village commercial offers an opportunity for the smaller parcels to have flexibility like the overlay district.
Okay.
Without the extensive impact assessments that have to be prepared for the larger scale development. That's the reason why we were reluctant to use the overlay district, because there's a lot of details that has to be provided. And for such a small parcel, it makes it not feasible.
Too cumbersome.
Yeah. What was the other thing I wanted to point out to you? Just lost it.
Yeah, and to continue with that line of thought, there's about 30 parcels in the village commercial district. Only 2 of them are over 5 acres. Most of them are about 2.5 acres, some much smaller than that. So this would allow them to get creative on their smaller parcels.
And the other thing that we have found, it just come back to me, so I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. The mixed-use concept is wonderful, and it has its place in certain areas of the village commercial.
Okay.
However, we do have some parcels that are very unique in that they're not located, they're kind of located really inland, and they do not have road visibility. So to actually develop those with commercial, it's not going to be a viable option. So this would offer an opportunity for people to make use of the road visibility with the commercial end of it, and then use the back portion of the property that's not visible for a residential type of development. So that's the whole purpose of this, is that we've learned a lot in processing one development with the mixed-use concept. And it's a wonderful idea and it's a wonderful concept, but I think there needs to be at least some flexibility in how we implement it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's well said. So any guidance that you'd like to give staff at this time? I'm kind of looking forward to what Planning Commission does with this, through their deliberations, but it looks like a good product to take to them and massage it, and certainly come back to us. Any other guidance from council?
I would just like to stress green space. We don't want to lose that.
Absolutely.
Let me just ask a question. We currently have 2 developments in some phase of the planning and so forth. How would this possibly affect those if they haven't started? If these new changes we put in place, would this be counterproductive to what's already being planned, or would they have to make modifications at the last minute? What would the situation be?
Are you speaking of townhomes or village commercial concept? The village commercial, the one project within that is quite far down the road now. It would not negatively impact them. It would allow them to maybe take advantage of a separation of uses if they wish this far down the road. But a lot of that engineering work's already done. I don't foresee them changing that at this time.
Okay. Anything else?
Move to electronic signs, Mr. Mayor, the next time.
Yeah, it's right at 7, so we're going to need to try and move smartly through it.
Kevin,
Okay.
give us the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, absolutely. This draft presented before you this evening was based upon your meeting September 8th, where we presented you with the sign, electronic message sign concept. So with that being said, we developed the language implementing all of your comments. We would allow them for city and school use only, provided certain restrictions are met. They would not be able to scroll, dissolve, move, or simulate any movement in any way. The messages must remain for 8 seconds. They are permitted as a portion of or in place of a permitted freestanding sign. If they're placed with a freestanding sign, an existing freestanding sign, or a proposed one, they would be allowed 48 square feet of sign area, which is an increase of 8 square feet that's allowed now, at least in the commercial district. That's to accompany both of the sign faces. The electronic portion itself shall not exceed 32 square feet. Additional provisions were made with, if they're within 250 feet of a residential district, they must be dark between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Brightness controls must be implemented and provided to the city at the time of permitting. In the event that a sign is in a floodplain, height restrictions may be relaxed to allow for the sign to be erected to base flood elevation. Essentially, these conditions would allow signs of a mixture of these two signs.
And again, that would be what we're proposing now, or what is being proposed,
Yes.
would be for city or school use only until we get more experience with this type of stuff and what it could bring.
Yes.
I have one quick question. The number you got for 32 square feet for the electronic portion, did you call or look up a couple of companies to see what their standard size offerings were, that would be?
No, that was just based upon general research, kind of a
I would
standard.
look into looking into different companies
Not
and what
like the
size
way-
they actually make them, whether 32 is reasonable,
Like the
maybe
way
it
they
needs to be
did this.
35.
Okay,
You know, just to make sure that that's what is the proportions and all that.
absolutely.
Shelf
Yeah.
type.
Right.
And I like the other thing that I like is that you to come up with the times, I like the way that you recognize the service station signs, kind of embedded in there with item G. Okay, that they can use just a regular diode, as long as they meet all the other requirements.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you for all your comments on that. That was very helpful in putting that
Okay.
together.
So all 3 of these then, as I understand, are heading to the planning commission, so they'll have a busy fall.
That was next Monday night, actually.
We hope, we like
It'll
to
be
keep
a
them
busy
busy.
fall. I don't think you'll resolve them on the first night, but I wish y'all luck. I really do. So.
All right.
Okay. Anything else from council? If not, we'll close the work session and move to the regular session.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think so.